Hello everyone and welcome back to game week 1 of the 2024-25 Optegra Premiership, where you join myself, Ryan Sipple, and my co-commentator Charlie McClellan for the opening game of the day between Sevenoaks PFC and Aspire PFC. Charlie, how are you?
I am very good. Wasn't here yesterday, so this is my first taste of the new Premiership season. Excited to see what another great year has to offer.
Yeah, it's hopefully going to be a really good, competitive, compelling title race. Already across yesterday's actions, we got a real taste of what's to come. Competition, controversy, quality, and it's wide open already.
Yeah, some of the results yesterday, you could see this sort of very, very fluid top of the table started opening. You know, Leeds beat Newcastle, then were beaten by Teesside. You know, Aspire and Greenbank played each other. Greenbank played Teesside as well. Yeah, loads of good games, loads of really close games as well. And today, even more, you know. It's getting to that point now with the National League that it's so competitive that you look at each day and there's always a couple of fixtures that you look at and think, yeah, they're really tasty fixtures. I know today we've got obviously Teesside and West Brom, Aspire and Newcastle. Some really, really good games. This title race is going to be very exciting.
I said on commentary yesterday that because I'm so involved and engrossed in the National League and the organisation and the streaming and the commentary, I didn't really give as much time or thought to how many quality teams there are in this season's Premiership. I've collated it. It's 18 signings made across the 12 teams, which is unprecedented. Add to that the 15 made in the Championship. And it only really dawned on me when I was listening to your Aspire podcast and you did your 5 games in terms of predictions, and every matchup you could say will be a great game in this division. Many people in and around the Power Chair football community have it as a 5-6 horse race, but already following yesterday's results, that could almost be minimised in the fact that Newcastle got off to a rocky start, Leeds have dropped points, Greenbank likewise, but 22 game season, 5 weekends, so much football left to be played.
Yeah, and I think one of the big parts of this title race that is unique to others is because of the quality of the league. I was talking to a few players about this actually across the week over messages, and they're all saying that the top teams feel they can now afford to lose, you know, 2 or 3 games in a season,
exactly, and
it not be catastrophic. You know, in previous years, if you lost a game, it was over. But now, with this competitive league, we'll see it a lot less catastrophic when teams do drop points, and it's going to be really interesting. Sevenoaks, obviously, we'll go on to them. Are a team that may be one of the not the losers, but one of the teams hit hardest by the sort of transfer merry-go-round this summer.
Yeah, one of the teams that lost a key individual. You're seeing their squad on the screen now. Very thin, only the 4 players at their disposal in Harry Bestwick, Kyle Alexander, James Mason and Miles Miller. Not just that, they've lost their head coach Adam McAvoy, who has been proudly appointed as the new England head coach, so congratulations to him. But a big switch up for Sevenoaks, and they're going to have to adapt without that presence on the sideline, which they've come accustomed to for the last 12 or so years. Tough day today opening against European champions Aspire. You can see their squad on the screen now. They've had a slight switch up. Brad Bates leaving, John Dixon coming in, but they're comprised of Sally McNeil, Dan McClellan, John Boldin, Jordan Williams, Tom Kelly, Rosie Hodgson and John Dixon.
Yeah, and I think Brad leaving is obviously what everyone's going to talk about, but Aspire feel that they've actually done really well to replace him, I think, in John Dixon. I know that internally there's a lot of excitement about John Rosie obviously is a player that was always there last season as well, and for many seasons prior, to sort of get things going, score goals, get assists. We are nearly ready to go here as well. Just getting some instructions from our officiating team into the two captains, Kyle Alexander, who will always be there for Sevenoaks on one half, and then John Boulding on the other. Our officiating team today, it's Ian Harley as a centre referee. He is assisted by Megan Harley-Biller and Pete Westmoreland. And interestingly, Aspire have gone with the 4 players of Boulding, Kelly, John Dixon and Dan McClellan. Sevenoaks have gone with James Mason adorning the goalkeeper top, Kyle Alexander, Harry Bestwick and Miles Miller.
Live on court beat. Teesside about to kick off against Norwich City. They've started off the season brilliantly with 2 wins from 2. No doubt will have aspirations of the title, as will the team in front of us, looking to regain it from fierce rivals West Bromwich Albion. A thumbs up from James Mason and Tom Kelly. And we are underway in the Sunday's round of fixtures in game week 1 of the 24-25 Optegra Premiership, where you're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, and Charlie McClellan for Aspire versus Sevenoaks.
Yeah, and you can already see such a compact setup from Sevenoaks. Instantly as Aspire came forward there, 3 of their players surrounding the edge of the penalty area. It's going to be difficult, and you've already seen Dan McClellan dropping a little bit deeper to try and sort of assist John Boulding to break that line, and it's just going to be a case of Aspire taking their chances when they come.
Contact there between Dan McClellan and Kyle Alexander. Goes in the favour of Aspire. So a direct free kick for John Boulding to take.
No malice in that, just a case of 2 players really challenging for the same ball.
It's unfortunate for Dan McClellan. Just mistimes that connection. We saw it yesterday, and I'm sure we'll see it across this game. The opening fixtures are always a bit of a bogey match-up. Having to travel over to the Lee Westwood Sports Centre, whether you're staying in a local hotel or travelling from home, we always see a little bit of rustiness. So they'll have to iron that out as the game progresses.
Yeah, and this weekend especially, you know, we've had a bit of a later start to the National League season this season, you know. We're almost at the end of October. It's the first weekend. So yeah, I think teams will definitely grow into it. No team, I don't think, has played their best football yet this weekend. But that just makes it all the more exciting for later in the season. What are Aspire going to do with this?
Saw it yesterday. Miles Miller's going to have a opportunity, controls it, as opposed to making contact at the first time of asking, which allowed John Dixon to come across and close the gap. We saw it yesterday in Teesside's games. They're kind of formidable with regards to their set-piece utilisation, and we're seeing it now with Aspire. Would you say influence from the United States, what we saw from them in Sydney?
The United States, and also a lot of what they will have seen out in Paris at the Champions Cup. Especially in the continent now, there's so much that goes into developing set pieces. They're such an effective and a big part of the game, and if you can manage them, you know, you're good for maybe a goal a game, 2 goals a game from them if you really perfect them. You know, that's what we saw from the United States, just consistent output from from set piece situations.
He was present, commentating, experiencing that journey with Aspire. Just give me a little flavour for how it was out in Paris, because it's just such an incredible achievement. I don't think it gets as much acknowledgement or recognition as it probably deserves.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a very interesting experience for both the English teams. You know, we got there in France and it was already decided that it was there's a goal.
A fantastic goal at that. Just you're seeing the passing patterns between the three attacking players of Aspire. Dan McClellan was on that right-hand wing. He distributed the ball to John Boulding in the centre, and there's no one more clinical at creativity and providing opportunities for his teammates than the England and Aspire captain. He put it on a plate for John Dixon there, and John Boulding side go 1-0 up within 3.5 minutes.
Another goal for John Dixon. That's his second or third of the weekend.
Yeah, at the half-time break, we'll bring up the goal tally chart as the ball just nicks up high over the bumper of Dan McClellan. He's having a great opening weekend. Another player in transition, having to adapt to a new feel, a new system. When he was utilised for West Bromwich Albion Throstles last season, it was in one of the two central players predominantly. But it shows his versatility, that he's really putting on a show out wide as John Boulding's going to attempt an effort. Once again, puts it on a plate for John Dixon. He's absolutely thriving off the chances created by Boulding.
Yeah, and I think it is just getting to know the Aspire system for John Dixon. I don't think there's any doubt that he's got the technical ability required to play this passing game. It's just about developing his sense of position in the game. But that's why Sevenoaks are dangerous. They've had, I think, 2 times now where they've managed to clear the ball, and when you get in behind Aspire and in behind John Boulding especially, they might be in business. We saw that sort of 2-touch attempt from Miles Miller. I'd like to just see them start having a couple of shots at the Aspire goal. Maybe they can win, you know, corners and kick-ins high up the pitch, and that could be their avenue back into this one.
It's consistency that's always been a problem for Sevenoaks. Yesterday they opened with a 1-0 victory over West Bromwich Albion Throstles, now coached by Colin Gordon, so a fantastic way for them to kickstart the 24-25 campaign. They only secured 2 wins across the entirety of last season, but that was followed by 5-0 thrashing by Newcastle United Foundation, and whilst both will have very different aspirations for this season, it was a disappointing result for the Kent Bay side.
Yeah, I think they're going to grow into this season. You know, nothing's decided on the first weekend. They will grow into it. They'll grow into life after Greg and Adam. Obviously, I'm sure they've played without them before, but still it's going to be very, very difficult to adapt to. And then, you know, the second half of the season, when they've set their system and they've got a style of play that they've decided on, then they'll be a much better team, I think.
It's them elements you've just referenced, paired with the fact that they've just got that squad of 4. So if they want to switch things up tactically and on a player front, they're unable to do so, which will be a real hindrance across the season. They're going to have to find that formula amongst them 4 players. I don't think anyone was necessarily expecting them to come here and really challenge Aspire. They were drawn into kind of the bottom placements last season, secured safety on the last weekend. If they can just amass enough points, just ensure that there's a little bit of a buffer between themselves and the bottom 3 positions. And just for context, whoever finishes in 11th and 12th will be automatically relegated to next season's championship. Whoever finishes 10th will be put in a one-off playoff game against whoever finishes 3rd in the championship. And as we've seen from last season, the championship team was successful in beating the Premiership team, so if and where possible, teams will want to avoid 10th place as well. Aspire really putting on the pressure now. Very congested in that Sevenoaks half, but that still doesn't take away from the accuracy and the clinical nature of their passes. They're finding the pockets of space.
Yeah, and I think that what they're actually finding themselves having to do is almost collapse John Boulding out of the attack sometimes and move it between the wingers when they can get in behind those 3 players. John Boulding is often not an available option. John Dixon, I think, maybe caught in 2 minds as to whether to fire across the box or back to his captain.
Contact there from Kyle Alexander, so direct free kick given to Aspire. Doesn't look as if they're shaping up to take a direct free kick though.
No, I think they might attempt the boom boom. It's very ambitious, but very magnificent when it comes off.
Yeah, nice attempt. They got the timing right, just wide of that left-hand post. When they do come off, they are a real spectacle.
Yeah.
Another thing I was talking about on commentary yesterday, we're just raving about John Dixon putting himself in some really good attacking areas to capitalise on John Bolden's creativity, is there's a real shared responsibility now, certainly amongst Dan McClellan, John Dixon and Rosie Hodgson, with Brad Bates departing, top goal scorer of the 23-24 season. They're going to have to try and find them goals amongst them. But they started the season brilliantly.
Yeah, I think Brad was a good player for Aspire. But there'll be things that they now do better with Brad out of the team. There'll be things that they don't have anymore. I do think that, you know, they have the players to still challenge, and I think, you know, we've seen other teams in the league sort of even it out a bit. West Brom, they've gained Brad, but they lost Marcus and Valentino Zegarelli, which is a massive loss for them. You know, Teesside have got a very good squad, Leeds have got a very good squad, Newcastle have got a very good squad. So I think this four that are on the court, plus Rosie, Jordan, Sally, they'll back themselves to take on any team in this league.
And as they should. It will be a really intriguing title race. Have been impressed with what I've seen from Teesside so far. They're currently live on Court B. No doubt will have aspirations of being the first side since Northern Thunder to dethrone one of either West Brom or Aspire. As John Bolden shapes up, once again caught in two minds. He wanted to really engage that ball, but the moment's hesitation meant the accuracy wasn't necessarily there.
Change for Aspire.
Yep, goal scorer John Dixon comes off. Rosie Hodgson onto the field of play. Bolden out to Dan McClellan, controls it, rotates, nearly finds Bolden on the edge. Good work from Miles Miller to just cut out that option. Front bumper. Hodgson's first involvement is picking out Dan McClellan. She does so well, absorbing a lot of pressure, and that's when they need to try and break. Bypassing John Bolden is a lot easier said than done, but if you're able to do so, there's potential opportunities on the break. Just this high line and attacking nature means the only real success Sevenoaks will have will be on the break and the counter-attack. Breaking that persistent press, really challenging. Kind of have to go backwards to try and go forwards. Space, a real issue, as we see Miles Miller just venture into the Aspire half for the first time in the last 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, Sevenoaks going to have to maybe start taking, not risks, but start being slightly more ambitious with their attacking play. You know, they've always got the outlet of either Harry Bestwick or Miles Miller up high, and they can search for him and find him and try and direct their clearances towards that player, and that player can take on a shot. You never know, they can catch Tom Kelly one-on-one. One-on-one situations are notoriously difficult to deal with as a goalkeeper in power chair football, because you simply just can't cover the whole goal.
2 games for Aspire yesterday, both ending 3-1 against Greenbank and Middlesbrough, 2 promoted sides. So on paper, more favourable start to the season, but 6 points nonetheless. And our judgment of Greenbank is slightly skewed when you reference and talk about promoted sides. You think automatic 3 points, but the acquisition of Marcus Harrison and Liam Fitzpatrick, 2 standout players, means that 3 points against the Liverpool-based side is far from a formality.
I think especially when you go 1-0 down as well to what can only be described as a screamer from Marcus Harrison. What a goal that was.
Yeah, calling it on commentary. What a goal. Just caught Tom Kelly and John Boulding unaware to find that gap. That just speaks to the brilliance of Marcus Harrison, one of the best players anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and when you go 1 down to a side with Marcus in, you know, he loves it. He kills games like that very frequently. You know, we've seen it in the league when he's done it for West Brom, and he did it in the Champions League as well when it was level and West Brom had 3 players, and he just managed to frustrate Aspire. And I think there must have been a real sense of dread in the Aspire squad when that goal went in early, that they were in for a very long 38 minutes or whatever it was. So
they've had a tough start to the game week 1 and the Premiership respectively, Greenbank. But I think anyone that's, as wait just for this Dan McClellan chance, anyone that's had the opportunity to play them or face them in game week 1, and they would have played Aspire, Teesside, West Brom and Throssels come the conclusion of game week 1, so incredibly difficult start. Anyone that plays them in game week 1 will see across the entirety of the season that it was a good opportunity for them to play them early on, because once they get that formula right, and when they understand the chemistry between Luke Kelly, Marcus Harrison and the players that support them too, they'll be a really difficult side to beat. You can see they're currently experimenting, they're currently trying to find the correct formula to take into games, and once they have that bravery, once they start to click, they could be a real force to be reckoned with.
I think their game against Throssels later will be a fascinating one.
Very much so.
They're under the new coaching of Colin Gordon, who's putting in a very, very ambitious style of play there. You know, trying to replicate what he had going with the England team in terms of a sort of 4 out and wingers on starting lines, picking it off into the middle. Very, very quick style of play. Bringing that into Throssels. It'll be interesting to see how the more sort of pragmatic style of Greenbank does up against that. I think that'll be a game that they'll really be targeting to try and pick up their first win of the season.
4 or so minutes left in this first half. Still Sevenoaks 0, Aspire 1. Opportunity for Aspire to double their lead here. Whilst it's been fairly one-sided, still only a goal separates them, which will please Sevenoaks, who've just settled as the half's grown on. Dan McClellan over to Rosie Hodgson. Fantastic goal. Curse of the commentator. You can just see how quickly they can increase the pace of play. Once again, John Boulding, this time out to Dan McClellan. Clinical ball across the box for Rosie Hodgson to make it 2-0.
Yeah, it's a good pass across, and Rosie Hodgson is a very clinical finisher. Doesn't often miss chances like that at the back post. Often finds herself in the right position, and this makes it much more difficult now for Sevenoaks. It'll be interesting to see whether they try and come out of their shell a little bit more in the second half and play, you know.
With that comes additional risks, and there's an opportunity. The first for Sevenoaks all game. Fired into the front bumper of Harry Beswick, who angled his chair in a fashion that tested Tom Kelly for the first opportunity, but not much trouble. And already it's back in the Sevenoaks defensive half. I think John Boulding, just a smirk to Tom Kelly. And it's credit to Tom Kelly, really. He's been so isolated, hasn't had any touches of the ball in the 17 and a half minutes we played. But when the ball did come to him, he was alert, engaged, and decisive in his decision-making, which helped them ensure it remained 2-0.
Yeah, really alert from Tom Kelly. That would have been a really weird freak goal if it had gone in, but that's what Sevenoaks need to do. They just need to stick it on Aspire a bit more, have more of a go, and you never know, weird stuff can happen. You can get deflections, goals can go in. There's a chance at the back post for Hodgson, cut out by James Mason, who a big season for him. He sort of had a season of transition last year at Sevenoaks, but now he's expected to be one of sort of the main men in that team. It'll be interesting to see how he fares. Obviously, we all remember his unbelievable season that he had with Brighton 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, he has to settle for a varied role. Last season they were experimented and they've opted to use him as the most defensive of the fours. He gives away possession there and the ball fires high. John Bolden just lets that bounce and drop to the floor. But based off the last 2 or 3 seasons for Sevenoaks, with all things considered, a lesser team, head coach departing, I think the ultimate aspiration will be Premiership survival. Anything beyond that will be seen as a bonus, as Dan McClellan tries to find Rosie Hodgson at the back post, unable to do so. But this season it's all about momentum and teams and players not only looking for domestic glory but aiming to build towards the 2025 EPFA Nations Cup. England, the reigning European champions, will be keen to maintain their dominance on the European stage, and players such as John Bolden and Dan McClellan will firstly want to maintain their positions in a new-look England. And there's an opportunity for players on the fringes, such as Tom Kelly, to maybe break into that squad.
Yeah, it will be definitely something that becomes more and more prevalent in players' thinking towards the end of the season, into the new calendar year. Think about how much the World Cup in Australia had an influence on the power chair football scene in this country. I think it'll be a similar, if not greater one for the next step for Champions Cup.
I just hope we can be a part of it. How amazing was Sydney as an experience?
Oh, I don't think it will be. It would take something very special to beat it. I think, you know, just everything. You know, we waxed lyrical when we came back about everything: the facility, the playing arena, the streaming service. Everything about it was so good. And to be fair, I had a similar experience in Paris. You know, it was the way that they did especially the streaming there was unbelievable, with full TV production crews. You know, you'd go down into the changing room area and there was full camera crews sat there cutting to different cameras, which was very interesting.
It just shows where our sport is going.
Really growing.
We're starting to get that recognition, and hopefully the major competitions, with the Optegra Premiership included within that, just to start to build in quality and to have recognition outside of our circle. We know how amazing our product is, but we want to shout about it from the rooftop so others know. But thank you to all that are joining myself and Charlie for this opening game on Court A. Sevenoaks 0, Aspire 2. We'll be back very shortly for the second half. Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Week 1 of the 2024-25 Optegra Premiership, where you're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, and Charlie McClellan for Sevenoaks versus Aspire. Thank you to all that are tuning in. As always, get your predictions, thoughts and considerations in the comments, and we will endeavour to give you shout outs. We can see many people tuning in live on Court Beat. Teesside running rampant against Norwich City. I think it's 7-0 over there from what I can see. Hat-trick for Greg Baxter on his debut National League weekend for the North East base side. Charlie, thoughts on that first half?
I thought it was probably a half that neither side will be furious with. I think Sevenoaks will be frustrated with the nature of the goals they conceded, and maybe frustrated that they couldn't get forward more, and Aspire will feel that they maybe gave up a few too many chances on the counter-attack, but I think, you know, leading 2-0, clean sheet at the minute, Tom Kelly will be happy with that, and Aspire will be happy that they've got both John Dixon and Rosie Hodgson on the score sheet. I think that probably the first 5 minutes of this second half are the big 5 minutes in this game. If Sevenoaks can manage to score a goal in the next 5, it will make it uncomfortable for Aspire.
It's a cliche in football, isn't it? 2-0 is a dangerous scoreline, and as you've rightfully pointed out, a goal for Sevenoaks could really change the dynamic of the game. A 3-goal buffer would almost certainly put it out of reach, as Dan McClellan always trying to find that gap between the two most defensive players of the opposition. It's a task he does so brilliantly. We saw him do it effectively in the first half, providing an assist to Rosie Hodgson. It's one thing they do so well is distribute the ball amongst their attacking players.
Yeah, I still think that was an interesting position to take up from Dan McClellan there. He nearly managed to get it off the back of his chair. Need to be careful here now, Sevenoaks.
I have to say, I do like the gold crest that adorns both their shirts and their nameplates to recognise and acknowledge the fact they were crowned champions of Europe at the Epfort Champions Cup.
Yeah, I think it was too big an achievement not to commemorate with something special like that. I believe it will also be on the home kit, which hasn't quite arrived yet due to some issues with manufacturing, I think.
Is it black as expected?
Yes.
Just wide of the left-hand post from Dan McClellan. I wonder what his sort of aspiration is and goal is for how many finishes he secures this season.
To be fair, I don't think he's never one that looks at stats. I think good save there from James Mason. I think Dan's one that's always satisfied with any part that he has in a goal, whether that be a goal or an assist or just contribution to the attacking play. I never catch him, you know, looking at goal leaderboards. I don't think it's something that massively bothers him.
17 league goals last season, so really clinical. And as already mentioned, the 26 goals scored by Brad Bates will have to be picked up by their attacking players if they're going to want to challenge, as Rosie Hodgson picks it out into the centre to that man in question. Pick off to John Baldwin on the right. Across the box, ricochets between Mason and McClellan. Harry Beswick with the near-on impossible task of trying to force the ball past the Aspire captain. Just ushered over to Hodgson. Better from Sevenoaks. Miles Miller unable to keep it in play.
Yeah, slightly more front-footed and aggressive with their defending, rather than sort of being passive and sitting back and just trying to keep Aspire out. They're looking to try and win the ball back and get it forward.
2-on-1 in favour of Aspire. To be taken by John Bolden. Into McClellan. Off the back of Mason's chair. A win for Aspire would take it to 3 wins from 3, onto 9 points. Slightly inferior goal difference on Teesside. Currently racking them up on Court B. West Bromwich Albion with a game in hand. Into John Bolden. Very uniquely doesn't engage that. You can see the intent to let it roll over to Rosie Hodgson. The Sevenoaks defence was certainly set up for a Bolden attempt. It's really nice football, and they can experiment with that 2-goal buffer. They can probably afford to trial things in this fixture ahead of more competitive games. Tom Kelly's going to get his first touch of the half. Swipes it up the court. Miles Miller didn't angle his chair in a fashion that further tested the goalkeeper. Out of play. Tough game this afternoon for Aspire. I think certainly on paper the toughest across game week 1 against Newcastle United Foundation, who were looking to bounce back after 1 win and 1 loss yesterday.
Yeah, that'll be really, really entertaining. They always proper go at it, Aspire and Newcastle.
They're the best games probably in the league, because Newcastle have no fear. We've commentated on many West Brom Aspire fixtures in the past, and sometimes they flatter to deceive, that they don't get you off your chairs really. We've had 1 or 2, but normally they get locked up in the dribble. Yeah. And it's about just not taking too many risks. We see a lot of draws between the two sides. I
think the most entertaining one I've seen, to be fair, was, I think it was in the group stage out in Paris, and both teams had qualified, and they sort of just played their football. They didn't try and shut each other out. They tried to attack each other. It only ended 1-0, but it was so end-to-end. That was probably the best I've seen it amongst those two. But yeah, Aspire and Newcastle, there's always two sides of the game. There's the football and there's the mental side, and they proper, I think due to the closeness between a lot of their players as well, it's always very, very entertaining, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of banter flying about no matter who wins it later.
I had tipped Newcastle to potentially lift the title, so when they lost their opening game, kind of made me have to reassess my expectations for the season. But as you've already pointed out, it's a season where teams can afford to potentially drop points, as Dan McClellan attempts an effort at goal. Sevenoaks really pushing forward, 4-out approach to try and half the deficit, and in doing so left a huge gap at the back for Dan McClellan to try and find, but Mason does well to just get back and guide it past the post, and the corner kick falls to Miles Miller. Brilliant reading by Tom Kelly. He was quick to come out of his box, and heavy contact from Miles Miller. Have to give credit to Tom Kelly there.
Yeah.
And as touched on in the first half, he's so isolated. You could almost expect lapses in concentration, but not at all. The most credible opportunity Sevenoaks had, and had Tom Kelly stayed rooted to his goalkeeper area, Miles Miller would have had a real credible effort on goal.
Yeah, it's a great starting position from Tom there. He just read it, and then he was so quick to respond to it. And I think what sometimes messes goalkeepers up in that position is a bit of hesitation, and they think, do I come, do I go? They end up stopping, and then they sort of get caught in no man's land. But Tom decided he was coming out committed to it, and yeah, was clattered as a result, but he won't care as long as he has defended his goal and he keeps his clean sheet for now.
I do want to commend Sevenoaks. They've been really brave at the moment, and that's showing. If they can play this sort of way across the season, Stan McClellan tries to squeeze the ball between the gap in the defence.
Yeah, they're very, very much so more front-footed now, Sevenoaks. Bestwick is just staying really high. Miller as well is joining him at points in the game. Here they go again.
How many people have seen it, and talking to people around the Lee Westfield Sports Centre, the Premiership can almost be divided into two divisions of 6. You've got 6 teams that will want to lift the trophy in West Brom, Aspire, Leeds, Teesside, Newcastle, and potentially even Greenbank. And then you've got others that will want to just maintain their Premiership status.
Yeah,
it's against them other teams, the lesser teams, so to speak, and I mean that in the best way possible. Teams such as Sevenoaks will openly acknowledge that they're not in a title hunt. So when I reference the other 6, it's teams such as Norwich, Nottingham, Sevenoaks, Throttles, Middlesbrough, potentially even Villa Rockets. That's when Sevenoaks will have the most credible opportunities to register points.
Yeah, I think Villa Rockets is an interesting one that you mentioned there, because I feel like this season is probably the biggest cause for ambition they've
absolutely
had in a very long time. They've put together a really, really strong squad.
And I had them as my team to watch, but seeing them be beat 2-0 against Middlesbrough in the first game yesterday, again, I had to reassess my expectations for them going forward. But another team in transition, grace period has to be factored in. As Aspire on court A continue to apply the pressure. 9 minutes left. Bolden to take. Opportunity for Miles Miller. Bolden brilliantly tracks back. Would have probably liked to see Miles Miller engage that ball a little bit earlier. The gap was always being closed. McClellan slightly forced. Mason well positioned. Pick off to Jordan Williams. The ball ricochets between Mason and Alexander. Out for a kick in.
I think my frustration when I watch Sevenoaks sometimes is that I think they do sometimes play a bit too safe. You know, Miles Miller has had a couple of chances where if he has a strike at goal, he maybe gets a goal for himself. Sure, sometimes it will go wide and sometimes it will be stopped by the goalkeeper. But if he has a bit more ambition to just back himself to shoot sometimes, I think he'll probably end up notching quite a few more goals to his name.
It's never ideal to lose, but I think if you offered them just a 2-0 defeat prior to this game, they probably would have taken it. And I say that because I very much suspect that goal difference will play a key factor in the bottom placements come the end of game week 5. Again, would like to see Miles Miller attempt to force the ball and switch it over to Harry Bestwick, who was in a world of space on the left-hand wing.
Yeah, it's not a criticism, I think, because he's been one of Sevenoaks' brightest players, Miles, but he's just it's something that he could do to really improve his numbers on a personal level. Just have a shot every now and again. I know he wants to set other teammates up. He's a very unselfish player, but take it on himself, and you never know what can happen.
Can I just give credit to John Bolden for that ball? Dan McClellan was locked in this bottom right-hand corner, down the line to Bolden, just threaded the eye of the needle over to Jordan Williams, whose effort just went wide of the left-hand post, but absolutely fantastic from the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, every time you watch him, you're always impressed, no matter how many times. How many times have we sat and watched him together and commentated on it, and it never gets less impressive, does it? What he can do with a power chair.
I said on a recent podcast that if John Bolden isn't the recipient of a King's Honour or a knighthood later on in life, the power chair football community has done something wrong, because he has taken the sport forward, kind of openly acknowledges the face of the game in this country, just to the sheer amount of what he's achieved. and what he's done for the profile. Such a fantastic advocate and representative for the sport. Not just that, 470 plus goals in total, 410 in the Premiership. Unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented. As Sally McNeil on in place of Dan McClellan, fires it back to Jordan Williams now, adorning the goalkeeper jersey. John Dixon back on in place of Tom Kelly. Sally McNeil with responsibility of this corner kick. Probably be just out of your shot into Boulding. Guided goal bound.
Just keeping Sevenoaks pinned in here, Aspire. Boulding being taken on by Bestwick. He knocks it out for a kick in. Sevenoaks, they'll be, I think, encouraged by this second half performance. It's definitely something that they can build on. They haven't conceded.
I completely agree. As mentioned earlier, they can produce this sort of performance against the teams they're more likely to score points from. I think they'll be all right. It's just that lack of squad depth as John Dixon can't quite angle his chair to capitalise on that powered ball from John Boulding. It's flicked out play from Sally McNeil. But they've certainly been organised. We've seen moments of brilliance, which has seen the goals scored by Rosie Hodgson and John Dixon. But beyond that, yes, it's been predominantly Aspire, but good organisation.
Yeah, really good.
Team.
I think that James Mason and Kyle Alexander have been really vocal, which helps. You know, when they talk to each other, communication is such a massive asset to have. Both very talkative players, and I think I've much also preferred it in this second half when they've been more aggressive in the way they've defended. And I don't mean like fouling and stuff, but they've not been passive and let the ball come to them. They've been more front-footed, been going and taking the ball straight off the bumper of the Aspire players, and it's helped them massively to sort of not allow Aspire to build that momentum that they were getting in the first half.
No,
and I hope it's something they carry forward in terms of a style of play.
Absolutely. Bravery plays such a key factor and role within power chair football. But absolutely echo that. Really nice stuff from Sevenoaks. They've just got to add a little bit of attacking flair to this defensive stability as Miles Miller switches the play over to Sally McNeil. Again, that's that bravery talking about. We knew John Boulding was reversing, but put his chair in a position that meant Boulding gives away the foul. You can understand if a player was to shy away from an interaction such as that, but in doing so wins his side a direct free kick taken by James Mason over to Harry Bestwick. Found the gap, went between himself and Boulding. 2 minutes to go. Sevenoaks 0, Aspire 2. Live on Court B. Teesside currently 8 goals up against Norwich. Said it yesterday, it's been a real baptism of fire for Norwich City, who I hope just enjoy the experiences. An unprecedented achievement for them to even be here, having secured their spot in the 23-24 Optegra Premiership via that playoff position and fixture, which hasn't been done in over 11 years. So I hope they can just enjoy the experience, competing at the top league.
Yeah, I think the addition of Thomas Donaghurt as well is a really interesting one for Norwich. A player that was really impressive out in Paris at the Champions Cup for his Irish side, Midlands United, and they've come over, the Donaghurt brothers, and they definitely have something to give to the side struggling at the bottom of the league.
So amazing to see players from other countries willing and wanting to test themselves in our top division. Door was opened last season by Valentino Zegarelli. The ball ricochets nearly kindly for John Dixon. Again, good defensive structure from James Mason to read that opportunity. Another potential break as Harry Bestwick gets ball side of Sally McNeil. But definitely green shoots. Definite positive for Sevenoaks to take. 20 seconds to go. I'm going to push you for a player of the match.
I think it's really tough, actually.
That's brilliant play before you do so. Sometimes I just wish Miles Miller would engage it first time. He's been given the space now. It's nice football. Whether or not it's intended, I don't know. But to go back to Carl Alexander, who had a lot of space just inside the Aspire half.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice football. But again, it's a chance there where they've sort of got Aspire isolated, almost one-on-one with the goalkeeper. I'd like to have seen a shot there first time. I think the player of the match is a very difficult one as the referee blows his whistle and signifies the end of a really good contest, entertaining. The second half was a lot better for Sevenoaks than the first, and I don't think they'll be massively downhearted by that. A good performance against a really good side.
No, absolutely fantastic from them in the second. As already mentioned, we just need to see that in follow-up games. Next up for them, they play Nottinghamshire, which will be such an important game for them across game week 1. And if they can take 3 points from that, 6 points from a possible 12 is not a bad start considering they've played Aspire and Newcastle.
Yeah, I think they'll massively take that. I think they would have targeted 2 games that you've just mentioned as potential winnable games, and if they can get 3 points from both of those, that's what you need to do to stay in this division. You know, you don't need to win every game. You don't need to even win, 60% of your games. If they can be picking up points on a consistent basis against teams in and around them in the league, then that I think they'll see as enough. And 2 really fascinating games now coming on to either courts. Greenbank and West Bromwich Albion on one. And then a really, really interesting game in Villa Newcastle on the other. That'll be a good watch, I think. Villa haven't quite hit the heights that I think they would have been wanting to, considering the injections into the team they've had of quality this summer.
Absolutely. So thank you to all that have joined myself and Charlie for Sevenoaks versus Aspire. I'll be calling the action on Newcastle United Foundation versus Villa. Next up on Court A. On Court B, Greenbank versus West Brom. We're next on commentary with one another for Teesside versus West Bromwich Albion. What a game that promises to be. See you all soon.
See you then.